Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our Connecting to Real Data in App Builder webinar. I am joined by Brian Lagunas, our senior product owner, plus our developer relations individual, and does all kinds of things here at Infragistics. He's actually going to join us today to show a new tool he built which supports some of this data story in App Builder. And what we want to do today is really familiarize you with how you can integrate data. Our data story, I would call it a V1. We've got V2 and V3 coming, but as someone who's starting to use App Builder, it's important to see how this comes together. And then at the end, I'll kind of share what we're actually doing next. So yeah, basic agenda. We'll show off App Builder. It's mostly demo today. Housekeeping, recording, and slides will be available after the webinar. We'll set up a follow-up email. And in the Zoom webinar, we also have polls, or not polls, but we have questions, Q&A, and chat. So those are open and on my screen and now on Brian's screen. And if you have anything that comes to mind, please let us know. The other thing, just to let you know, we do these webinars every 2 weeks. And then on the off week, we're doing YouTube lives at 5 o'clock on Tuesdays, 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, I think it is, or we might be moving it to Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. And what we're doing there is just all demo, kind of going over maybe a little refresh of the webinar, maybe something that's coming next, or just something very specific. And we're going to do these as much as possible because there's a ton of people that have a ton of like just basic how-to questions with the product. And the more that you let us know inside of these chat windows, the more focused we can make these sessions, and they're all for you. So we want to just continue to remind you of what the product does. And then of course, get your feedback on what to build into it. So again, if you have never attended a webinar here, don't know what App Builder is, it's 100% cloud-based WYSIWYG. Basically, we took the complexity out of designing the user interface because there's no IDEs for Angular developers, Blazor developers, React developers, etc. I want to highlight something today, and I get a ton of questions about Blazor. We are shipping Blazor support around the time of the .NET Conf, which is the first week in November. So you'll be able to generate Blazor code. But start using App Builder now, because the way App Builder works is that anything that you design in the IDE, you just say, I want Angular code or I want Blazor code at the time of code generation, and then it'll just spit out Blazor code, or it'll spit out React code, or it'll spit out Angular code. So I get these emails like, oh, I'm going to wait till November then. Like, why would you wait? It's going to take you a week or two to become familiar with App Builder. Build all your screens pixel perfect, run them, share them with stakeholders, run them in Angular, show your boss, start writing code, because all that will translate over to Blazor. So I just want to highlight that with all the questions coming in about Blazor, start now. App Builder, you're not going to learn it in one day. There's a lot to it. So continue to learn and experiment with the product, send us feedback. And when we ship Blazor, flip the switch and boom, you're getting Blazor. So connecting data, the reason we did this, and like I said, it's sort of a V1, but we've got V2 shipping actually in October. I'll talk about that at the end of the webinar. But really, when you're doing an app, you want real data. So there's nothing worse than looking at something and then the first question is, well, wait a minute, is that really the format, or is that how it's going to look? So we just implemented this data story, which allows you to very easily connect into JSON data sources, either local or remote, and then bind those into any control, any data bound control in App Builder. And that's basically what we're going to show you today. So I'm going to jump right into a demo. I'm going to minimize my screen. I'm going to open up my browser here. And again, I am in at our App Builder main page. To get here, just go to our main menu, go to Indigo.Design App Builder here and click it, and you end up here. I'm going to go ahead and hit sign in. and I will jump directly into the app builder. And actually, I'm jumping directly into Indigo.Design. Has a bunch of features, but we're going to focus on apps. So I'm going to go ahead and click New App, and I am just going to do a layout, a header plus a left nav. And of course, if I would have clicked samples, there's a bunch of pre-baked samples that you can use too to learn from. But this one, I'm just going to do some basic data binding stuff just so you can see how it works. So the way that we've done data binding is you've got your little data icon here in the left-hand side. I have several data sources already set up, and they persist between apps and between my sessions. But you can go ahead and click plus new data source, and we've got a couple ones coming down the road. In the poll, I'm going to ask you what other data sources you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and upload a local JSON file. That JSON file will look something like this. So it's got title and it's got an image URL. So I've got two fields in this JSON file. It's called lakesimages.json. So I'm going to go ahead and upload this. This is on my computer. It's on my desktop, lakesimages.json. I'm going to open it up. I can download this or put it in the trash. I'm going to select that data, and I just want these two fields. I can rename this, and I'm going to call this sample lakes data. And that's good enough for me. And I click done. So then what happens is in my data sources window, I have something called data sources 4, and it's called, represents my sample lakes data. What I can do here is even rename data source 4, so it's a little more friendly. And I'm going to say webinar demo lakes data. So that's something that I just added. When you go to App Builder for the very first time, we already do provide you with Northwind data. It's mock data. So if you don't have JSON data, don't worry about it. Use the Northwind data that we ship with the product. Brian is going to show in his demo how you can take something and basically any data you have, you can use in App Builder. But what I did is I just said, let's just add my own data. So I'm going to go here and go to my view 1. And I will do just some basic sort of tips and tricks before I pass it over to Brian. So here I'm in view 1 and I want to add a new component. And let's do something like, of course, you're always going to try to do first, which is a data grid. So the thing about the data grid is you've got the data property. And once I'm in the data property, I can select any one of my data sources. So if I grab the mock customers data source in Northwind, you can see here that I've got all of my Northwind data in this view. If I click preview, this is what you're going to see in the preview window. Oops, let me make this a little bit smaller. Let me hide my code view so I can view the whole thing. And there's my data grid with all of my data in it. So just like you would expect in your real app. And then when you generate the code for this, you can see in the code view, what's neat about this is that I've got my IGX data grid. It's bound to a data source. And I have a few properties set on the grid, and then I'm auto-generating all of the columns. So we're doing all this. We actually create a data service. So you've got a Northwind customer service. So if you actually generated the code, you could see all this. And that's also how you can learn and then swap it out for your own data when you're actually working on it. So doing something like the grid is pretty straightforward. Now, if I go to view 2, I'm going to delete this guy, and I'm going to do Control E again. Now, Control E is a shortcut. It brings up this list of all the components. So I can actually type in what I want. If I'm not familiar with all the components that are shipping with the product, just go to the toolbox and you can kind of scroll down here. But this list control is also data bound, or it's not data bound. It's really up to you. So you have this repeat mode on its property editor. What I want to do is I want to say, let's use some data. And in this data, I want to use my my lakes data. So I want to do, actually, I'm going to save sample lakes for another one. I want to use Northwind employees for this particular data source. And the reason I'm going to show you this, let me make my screen a little bit bigger. I want to show you a little tip and trick here to get this stuff data bound. So in a list control, there's logical things here that I can bind. So I've got this little plug connector. So I'm going to connect something from my data source over to this guy. So I'm going to connect the title. Let's do last name. And then for the subtitle, I want to do first name. So you can see here that automatically this stuff is getting bound to the control. I'm also controlling how many that I'm displaying. So a lot of times you're just trying to get the point across. So you might want, 9 records, you might want 5 records. So in this case, I'll leave it at 5, and I've got my 5 records. Now, the other thing to note is that in a list, you have an icon, which is, or it's actually an avatar. So the avatar control, which is also in the toolbox, has several representations: initials, image, or icon. I'm going to go ahead and click image, and now I'm going to connect this to the avatar URL, which is in the data source. So now I've got a completely data bound control with images and with text. So just like that, I'm taking something from a data source and I'm making something real out of it. So that's super easy and basic to do. And you can do not data bound, like I mentioned. Another component that's really useful for this is a card view. So card views, again, have a data bound property. So anything that has a repeater or something like a grid or a chart, you're going to see this data option here. Even things like button groups, checkbox groups, they all have data bound properties. So you can bind basically to everything, which then will generate that code, which then gives you sort of a huge advantage when you start working with these controls. So in this case, I've got my card. I'm going to bind to my lakes data. So here's my sample lakes. And what I want to do here is actually turn on a couple properties and bind some other ones. But the key one here would be I want to show my avatar again, but I can do a default card type. I can do a social card type. And you'll notice when I flick over to a social card type, these properties adjust and my avatar adjusts. So we've built in different types of cards that you would automatically want to use based on the type of application or display that you want. So this is media column. Let's go with social. And what I want to do with social is really show off these pictures of lakes that I have, because this is going to go on my social feed. So I'm going to connect title. So you can see here, Puapu Beach, Kaloa, Australia, New South Wales. And then my image URL will bind. And then just like that, magically, I have a data bound card control with actual data. So I'm getting images. I've got data coming in from my JSON file. And then I can, of course, go ahead and start mucking around with the layout and how this thing actually will look in my screen. I'm just going to leave things like this. We'll do another session on layout. But that's how easy it is. So any one of these components that you grab from the toolbox that has a data option, you can use any of the data sources that you have in any of the apps that you've already created, or add your own data sources, and then you can just start working to get live data. If I go back here to new app, I want to show a really cool app that we actually just shipped 2 pretty slick ones, an e-commerce and then a travel app was in there already. But Andy, our designer on the team, put this together. I'm going to go ahead and click try sample. And in this particular sample app, if I go to my screens and I go to articles, you can see where it is like not faded. Those are actual bound, individual bound cards. And then where it's grayed out, you can start seeing where the repeaters are going. So this guy here, I'm binding to this card, and then all of the other fields in it are actual bound from the data. So I can't muck with it. So we let you select the first one that's bound, and then you can muck with these properties, and then that'll change for all of the items that are in your list. Same with here. You can see like, oh, okay, that one's activated, but these are not. Oh, well, that means this is a data bound component, and I've actually bound properties to it. So as you go through these demos, you can also learn and see how we did some of these examples. And the key thing here is it's going to help you learn how to do the layouts, because the layouts is really the most challenging thing for someone coming from like Windows Forms over to the web. So this is using a flex layout, and we've got a bunch of help on this and a bunch of samples that show you how to use it. But at the end of the day, it's still usually the top challenge. So if I click preview and I run this guy, you can see here that I've got my data bound controls. Let's get rid of the code view. And these are all images coming from my data source. So everything here is data bound, coming from a real data source. It's being used in a real app. And then if I generated this code, which we went through last week, I can download the zip or go right to GitHub. I would see how all the data binding works. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. The plus sign on, the plus sign on your data sources window is actually the key to help you get data into your app. You've got the ability to add a URL or upload your JSON, which is what I did. Now I'm going to let Brian share his screen and show how you can take your Excel data and use it inside of App Builder with the new tool that he used. So Brian, I am going to stop my share and I'll let you go ahead and share.
All right. Let me know when you can see my screen there.
Yep, and let me answer this question real quick. Anonymous attendee asked, how does that data source link to my on-prem database? So this is a cloud service, so everything must be in the cloud for it to work. So the recommendation is, if you want to start using like a schema, for example, or some sample data, this is where this demo from Brian comes in. Like, dump some of your SQL stuff to an Excel file, get it up in the cloud, and then you can start playing with it through this tool. All right, Brian, you're up.
All right, awesome. Okay, so you can see my screen, you see Excel to JSON.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, everyone. So essentially what Jason just covered is pretty straightforward, right? We want to show you how you can take data, your JSON data from anywhere to help make your design experience better within the app builder. Well, this is where Jason and I had this great idea. We're like, well, what if you don't have JSON data? What if you don't have a JSON feed to come from? Like, what's the easiest way to create data? We're like, Excel. Like, hands down, Excel is by far the easiest way to create data. And in a lot of cases where you go for a data source, they'll give you either a CSV file download for data, or they'll give you an Excel file that has data in it. And so we said, you know, wouldn't it be great if we could just take that CSV or that Excel file and convert it to JSON? And so we wrote this tool called Excel to JSON.io. And this is live. Actually, I'll put this in the chat right now so everyone can just click on it and go right to it, wherever the chat window in this thing is. Does anyone know how to get the chat? Oh, here it is. I don't use
up at the top.
Yeah. So essentially what this allows you to do, allows you to take an Excel file. So for example, I'm going to click and I'm going to just grab this Excel file here that says sample. And what it's going to do is going to load the Excel file on the left side. And on the right side, you're going to see the data that's in this Excel file converted to JSON, right? That's pretty sweet. But what's really cool is, in this case, this is a table, right? So I'm in this table. If I switch tabs and I have data on another worksheet within the document, it will switch to that table. And if I scroll over and select that table, it's going to produce that table. So I can come around here and switch back and forth. And within a single spreadsheet, you know, I can choose whatever data I want to use. But it doesn't stop there. What's really cool is what happens is, like, you know what? I just want to mess with this data a little bit. Let me change that to like 0. And I can actually edit the data within this Excel file, and you will see that the JSON is updated when I edit that, right? Now, here comes the best part. Okay, Brian, well, you generated this JSON, but how do I get it? Well, there's two different ways you can do this, right? You can download it. You can just download the JSON file right here. It's going to open it up. Or you can get a share link. And what the share link is going to do is going to give you a link that you can use in either an HTTP client in your application, or if you go to App Builder and go to your data and you say, hey, I want to add this recipe, I want to add a URL, provide your URL, hit done, select the data, and here is all the information from that data source. Hit done. You know what, let's just go ahead and do it. Let's add let's put a grid on here really quick. So I'll throw a grid on here, make that bigger, go to our data, my data source, boom, there it is. There's our JSON data being fed from this JSON feed that I just created. And while this is primarily built for, for App Builder, you can use this in any application. client side, server side. You just need the share link, and you can use any HTTP service to access that data. And what's really cool about the Excel to JSON is like, okay, well, besides Excel, right? You could do data. You could do CSV, right? That's just a CSV file, but you can also create a new one. So I can just come here and say, oh, name. I'm just going to create some fake data because I know what I'm expecting, right? I'm 100 years old. Jason, he's 150 because he's older than I am. But as you can see, I can sit here and I can just willy-nilly create any data structure I want, add whatever properties I want. I don't know, whatever. And then that JSON will be generated, and I can either download that as a file or get a share link and then use that link with any HTTP request I have, which is pretty slick if you ask me. I'm pretty excited about this. Another thing I want to mention, this is on GitHub, so I'm going to go ahead and paste this link in chat as well. So everyone can go to the GitHub link, report bugs, because this is V1, right? V1, there's some features I want to add, there's some bugs I need to fix. But if you run into a bug, let me know, report it, please, and we'll get it fixed as quickly as possible. But yeah, that's Excel to JSON in a nutshell.
Cool. Well, I think everyone should use that because it's pretty slick, and I've used it already like 100 times because it's perfect for the on-prem scenario. It's also perfect, so let's say I want to do an app builder and integrate in Salesforce data, and I don't want to use a public URL in the actual app builder. So I can pull the schema down. I can add mock data. There's a bunch of mock data websites. They escape me now, but just type in mock data and you can pass a schema and it'll generate mock data. And that represents the actual schema of like your Google Analytics, your Salesforce data, your CRM data, or if you're using SQL Server, it's even easier. You can just dump data directly to Excel, obfuscate it, do whatever you want. So there's a lot of cool.
Yeah, the way I've been doing it most commonly is I'll create a new Excel document. And then all the data I usually use is like in a table on a website. I just copy the table in text and paste it into here. And it just generates all that data I copied from a blog post.
Yeah, that's slick.
That's how I've been using it.
I did that actually this morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen back. Yeah, I'm going to stop Brian from sharing his screen, share. So if I did Excel to JSON, Excel to JSON.io, and I have over here in my desktop, I've got this file called Northwind Excel dump. So I dumped Northwind to Excel. And then of course, yeah, like Brian said, I could copy paste this in, or I can just upload it directly into the file or into Excel to JSON, and it'll give me JSON for all of this, which would represent the actual data that I'm using in the product. Now, there was a question from GoHawk. Yep. So here just to save time, I will show you what we do when we generate what we're actually doing. So here, and if you look at the code in the code view and in the actual app builder, this is, for example, the IGX card that I showed, and you can see we're using an NG4 and we're looping through travel, app, article, source one, and then we're doing data binding on the actual properties of this component. Now, if I look at the TypeScript, what we're doing here, and this one, I guess I didn't do an NPM install on, but I've got this travel app article source one is getting its data from travel app service. So if you're building an Angular app, this is how you would build out your data service. You would actually have something called the data service. So travel app service, let's go down here to my travel app service. So I've got this travel app service here, which is going to return this table name. And if I go to my travel app TS, these are the data sources that I actually uploaded to App Builder. So in this code or your own functions, you would do whatever your code is to pull in your real data, however you'd like. Now, like I said, this is V1 of what we're doing with App Builder. Shipping at the latest, from what I heard this morning, at the latest, we're going to be shipping an update in the very first week or second week of October, about a month from now, which will have full Swagger support, and it'll actually connect to your web API. So the idea is that the next release of this product will have a bunch of features, but the big thing for data is if I'm creating a web API with ASP.NET Core, for example, and I add in a Swashbuckle to generate Swagger, Swagger API for my actual web API, we're going to be able to pull that in and then offer you create, read, update, delete capability. So what we're going to ship in October is actual live web API data in the cloud, of course, with Swagger support to read. And then we'll have all of the endpoints and code for update and delete and create. But we're also working on a form builder, which is part of Indigo App Builder. And the form builder will ship later this year. And once we ship the form builder, you'll have update, delete, and create capabilities. So the big thing coming in October is full Swagger support if you're building web API and you're deploying to the cloud, which most of us are doing now. And then following that, we'll have our form builder with additional capabilities. Now, that being said, we also are shipping an on-prem version of Indigo.Design App Builder this fall as well. I'm hoping in the November timeframe, maybe December at the latest. And in that on-prem version, it's going to be deployed to your local servers. How we're going to allow you to access local data, I'm not exactly sure yet, but that'll be a discussion that once we do the next webinar in October, showing you this new support, you will be able to, we'll be able to talk about it more and give you more of an update. So yeah, Brian answered that. Yeah, it's just like, it's your API. So the idea is you got get customers, update customers, delete customers. You want to pull that in. We will read that Swagger API. We will create the endpoint in the generated code that we're going to generate. And we're also going to pull in the schema of whatever that data is. So yeah, in fact, we have a webinar coming up on the 29th, which is September 29th, which is showing how to build a web API using Reveal, which is our BI product, and then integrate that into App Builder. So we're going to go through the whole process. And if you go to that webinar, you'll see how to use Swagger, and you'll see how to start from scratch. Like we're actually going to start from scratch, add Swagger. The only thing we're not going to do is deploy to the cloud. I already have one deployed to the cloud. And then Brian created this whole demo where I'm going to gut the generated code from App Builder and then replace it with this live code, basically exactly what you guys are asking, like, how do I get my real data coming in? And that's the webinar on the 29th. We're going to spend a little bit more time on that. So that is today's session. Hopefully now you can see how to get data into App Builder. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. We have a pretty exciting roadmap for the future of this. On the 28th of September, we're going to show you how to customize data grids. The reason it's the 28th is because that's when we're shipping our new data grid designer in App Builder. So you'll be seeing it for the first time like everyone else in the world. It'll be pretty exciting. And then the 29th, John, if you're on the thread here, maybe in the chat, you can post the login or the registration for the Reveal webinar, which we're going to go over integrating Reveal into an Angular app using App Builder, and we'll do Web API and all this other stuff as well. So if you want to paste that in, that'll probably be pretty useful. And then will there be options to connect to cloud APIs that require authentication tokens? Yeah, right now, actually, you do have the option to add an authentication. If I do a REST API and I add a URL, you've got header values that you can add. So those will get passed so you can authenticate back, but you'll also get that with Swagger as well. And how can we get access to developers who have expertise in Indigo.Design? It would be great if there was a place we can. Yeah, Dave, I think you asked this last week. Send me an email, jasonb@infragistics.com, and I can help out with that. We actually have a services team at Infragistics that can help as well, if you need to get started or anything like that. And it looks like that's all the questions for today. I want to thank everyone for attending. Oh, actually, no, I don't want to end yet. I have a poll real quick. I'm going to launch this poll. If you guys could answer the poll questions, because I'm asking specifically about data sources. So we've got REST. Basically, we'll have OData support. We'll have Swagger support. But in this poll that I just launched, it should be on your screen somewhere. If you could just bang through these questions really quick, it will help us continue to craft features and the message. So I see 0 yet. Brian, do you see the poll up on your screen, or are you since you're a participant or a
Yeah,
panelist?
I see it.
You do see it?
Yeah.
Are you able to answer it?
Yeah, I'll answer it. I want to see this.
Oh, maybe it takes a minute for things.
Oh, no, it says host and panelists cannot vote, so I can't answer it, but I see it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, if you guys can, here we got some, so everyone now just said, oh, I better watch this webinar. So cool. Everyone, we're getting some responses in. But yeah, this is important to help us craft the future of the product. So with that, I will go back to my final slide. This is your URL to get App Builder. If you want a deep dive demo, sales@infragistics.com. If you have any technical questions, of course, use Brian and I as technical resources, jasonb@infragistics.com or blagunas@infragistics.com. We are here and ready and wanting to help you be successful with App Builder. So please, please help us out. And let's leave the poll open. Yep, Brian, this means you'll either manually merge. Yep. Got the GitHub.
Yeah, actually, let me just take a minute to address that. That was a great question. So the question was, so I generate the code, okay, and now the code's on my hard drive. I've generated it. I've done npm install. I'm writing custom code within my project that I've generated from App Builder. What happens when I generate again? Will it overwrite all my custom code? Well, the way this works is that code generation is one way, right? So if your changes and any code you write on your hard drive, the code generation comes from App Builder in the cloud. And so if you're doing the zip drive approach or the zip file approach, then you're going to have to unzip the newly generated code and manually bring in the changes that you want. That way you don't overwrite any of your custom code. Maybe you're just adding new files, or you're modifying just portions of an existing file. For GitHub integration, because we integrate directly with GitHub, so instead of exporting or generating your code via zip, you can generate your code to a GitHub repo, and then any updates will automatically result in a PR that you can then merge, and you'll see what changes are being added and removed. So we have GitHub integration for code generation, and we have zip file. So it just depends on which approach you're taking.
Yeah, and actually, if you jump over to our YouTube site, Infragistics YouTube, I believe the YouTube live from last week is posted, and the webinar from 2 weeks ago is posted, which goes over some of that round robin GitHub story, which, yeah, we're continuing to improve. Yeah, so Ken, I'd love to see you double the time. It's such a catch-22, because research shows that people pay attention for about 6 minutes. So this is why we're trying to do these webinars as well as the YouTube lives, and we're going to continue the frequency of these things, but we're also building up behind the scenes a library of videos, just self-help videos, or self-service videos. We welcome that feedback. And in fact, Ken, if you want to email Brian or myself and say, hey, if you had an hour, it would be better if you could also include this, or review what you did at the last webinar, show more demos, all kinds of stuff, we will do that. So, you know, and what we can also do is just do 30 minutes of the core topic and then do another 30 minutes of random topics as well, because there's a lot that we could continue to show for the features. And then we're also in this weird flux position where we got a big release coming at the end of September, where there's going to be like 5 new features that we're really going to want to show. So in the month of October, there'll be like some probably more interesting things that you haven't seen before. And we're just going to continue to release stuff out. So all of your feedback is very much welcome.
Yeah, I'll also add that I put a link to my YouTube channel on there because I actually I live stream for at least 2 hours a couple times a week on YouTube, and I get more into the details and weeds and have conversations. So if you're you know, on your lunch break and you want to join me for a live stream, like for example, last week that Excel to JSON app that you just saw, I wrote that live during the live stream. So from app builder generated the code because Excel to JSON was designed in app builder. We generated all the code and we started modifying the code to actually implement the functionality all live during last week. So yeah, be sure to follow me there if you want more in-depth live streams.
And then Go Hawk, yes, if possible, can you have a toggle button to include or exclude regeneration of services TS with GitHub? That's a good idea, actually. So what we are doing is we are going to have a fixed merge branch with app builder changes that will not affect the main branch. And then you can merge selectively the individual files based off of the design branch per se, or the do not merge branch or whatever we end up calling it. But things like that would be useful because services is clearly something you're going to write custom code in, besides the TS for every single screen. So yeah, we're working on that back and forth for sure. And then Chad, that's a great idea. We started this learning library. And the thing about the learning library is it is a little bit light right now, but we are working behind the scenes to improve it. So if you go to App Builder and you go to help or learning resources, so we've got a few videos here already. And then of course we've got docs, but we're continuing to improve all of this learning library story. And we've got, you know, a bunch of videos that cover a bunch of different scenarios for Indigo.Design in general, but this is where we're beefing up what exists today. Okay, so cool. We got basically about looks like 70% participation in our survey. So I want to thank everyone for that. One other tip I will share, and this is kind of cool, is when you're in the app builder, one of the things is like, you know, Brian, let's say, for example, will create an app and it'll be outside of my app and I'll see a screen, or he'll say, hey, I did this thing. So what you can do here is, like, I'm in this travel app 1, but let's say there's something I want here. Oh, Andy was actually helping me with these app layouts. And I think, yeah, these are the ones that she worked on. So she created this top content horizontal split bottom thingy here. And this is something cool. And I want to do this exact same thing for my app. So I just Control A, Control C. I jump back over here to my travel app 1 that I was working on. And I'm going to go ahead and under home, or actually under in-app, I'm going to add a new child view. And I'm going to say dashboard view or something like that. Dashboard view. And I just Control V and I just paste that guy in. And now this actually looks like my my container had a different layout than I wanted. So I can actually go here and I can start modifying my grow, shrink. I can select a position of absolute, static, relative, and I can move this around to actually get it the way that I want it on my screen. So here, by going from a row to a column, I have a slightly different layout. And this one here is actually going to be sort of like a list view. But we also give you these really useful features to where you don't have to actually memorize and know everything about Flex layout. I have visual markers that are actually helping me position things on the screen, and things will let me do overflow, hidden, wraps, no wraps, etc. But using these tools within the product to move back and forth between apps. And then, for example, if I was working on an app with my team, I would actually go back to Indigo.Design, and everything that I build myself is under my project. So these are my personal projects that no one can get access to. But then we have this concept of workspaces. So I want to do a new workspace, and this will be demo workspace. And in this workspace, I want to add Brian. So now, oh, it's actually B Lagunas. And he's not in my list here at infragistics.com. So now Brian's going to get an email that he is added to my workspace. There he is right there. So now Brian's in there. And so now anything that I do inside this workspace, Brian has access to. So now if I go to apps, notice up here I'm in demo workspace, I'll do a new app, and let's go ahead and we'll just pick the team collaboration app. And now as I make changes, Brian gets updated. Brian can go in here now and we can work on this thing together. So through workspaces, you have this level of security where you can just work with a group of people or maybe your design team versus always being in like my space and then, you know, not being able to just share this with the outside world. Or what I would be forced to do if everything was in my space is I would actually have to push everything to GitHub into a public repo and then or a private repo and add Brian to it. So use workspaces as well in the product, in the Indigo.Design product, because that is how you can actually work with others on your projects and not keep things singular to yourself. So those are a couple of cool tips and tricks, and we'll do videos on those as well for the YouTube channel.
There's a question about charts there in the app builder.
Yeah, so actually we've got two cool things coming with charts. We are integrating in the category chart right now. So if you go to Infragistics here, and I'm just going to go to my, let's go to my Angular samples. So this is the Infragistics website. And if I scroll down and you go to charts, we have all these chart types: area chart, bar chart, column chart. We're working on getting those into App Builder right now, which is pretty slick. And then we're also going to do an example. So one of the things about App Builder, when you have the on-prem version, and we're not sure about this cloud version yet, but for sure the on-prem version, you're going to be able to have all of your own stuff in the toolbox. So here, if I go and I edit this app, all of these items in the toolbox are the items that Infragistics puts in the toolbox, and all of these items map out to our Ignite UI for Angular, Blazor, React products. So what we're actually doing is we're going to let you add your own components to this. So you'll be able to do like group controls that currently exist or do custom controls. So, okay, we're going to add charts, and you're going to see chart in the list, and it'll have a configurator, and you'll be able to do all that stuff. But we're also going to take an open source charting product and show you how to create extensible components that you can then stick inside of the toolbox. So keep an eye out for that. It'll be like a whole instruction. So then if you're like, hey, I've got some business objects that I need to use that are proprietary to my company, I don't want anyone else to have them, how can I get them into App Builder? Well, if you follow along this path of using a relatively complex component like a chart, we're going to have all the docs and the how-tos to actually show that. And I'm sure we'll end up doing a webinar on that as well. All right. Any other questions, Brian, that I missed?
I'm not seeing any.
All right, cool. Well, we want to thank everyone for today. We went a little over. Appreciate you all attending. Just as a refresh, my email is Jason B. Brian's email is B Lagunas. Shoot us an email with questions, comments. Oh, here you go. How go? You're actually talking about the form builder. So when I earlier mentioned adding the full round robin CRUD support, That will be finished when we ship the form builder. So the form builder will essentially let you just drag a bunch of data items onto a form, and we'll just generate the form for you. And then that will have create, update, and delete. That should ship this year. I'll keep you updated on that through the blogs or through these webinars on when that's shipping. So yes, that's coming. So that means whatever back end there is on your web API, you can have the full round robin for CRUD data entry. Okay, so I think that's the last question we got. Good, and we'll keep you posted on these things. So thank you, Brian, for your demo. Thank you for building out Excel to JSON with Andy, who's our lead designer on this product, and she is can make anything Brian creates look beautiful and stunning. So Brian basically had 2 squares and a big button in the middle, and then Andy took it and she made it into something that's stunning and beautiful. So we want to thank her for all of her hard work there too. And then our IT team, actually what forced Brian to containerize this so it's scalable, so we have it deployed to Linux boxes with Docker, right, Brian?
Yep, I had to learn Docker in just a day or so.
Yep. And so now if you got like 10,000 people hitting it at once, it's all deployed to scale. So thank you, Pete, and his IT team for pulling all that together. All right, everybody, thank you very much. And we will see you next Wednesday at our YouTube live session. Thanks again.